to our fourth week of Zoom workshops. I'm really excited about the topic tonight because I have a lot to learn about accessible gaming, both of the virtual and in real life variety. So we have some great folks to teach us tonight. We have Richard and Emily Gibbs from 64 Ounce Games. We have Brett Boyer, who is a tech instructor at the Colorado Center for the Blind. The National Federation of the Blind of Colorado is excited to offer these workshops. We're going to continue having great content the rest of this week. We're going to tomorrow have a tech talk with Curtis Chong and JJ Mehta of AT Guys. On Wednesday, we're going to have a workout. We're going to do a Blind Alive workout all together. On Thursday, we're going to have a guide dog discussion where we'll have guide dog handlers as well as some guide dog programs represented. And then on Friday, we're going to have a happy hour where we're going to make a delicious chili dip together and tell each other about our favorite drinks. So tune in the rest of this week. And I will turn it over to Kevin, Scott, or Maureen for any other opening commentary before we get going.
Yeah, just a reminder, our COVID-19 hotline, 303-778-1130, extension 219. And we also have an email, assistance@nfbco.org. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
And I have nothing this time, Jess.
All right, that's somebody write it down.
Yeah, write down that.
I really don't have anything either other than to say welcome to everybody and thank you to our presenters. Thank you so much.
All right, so we are going to first turn it over to Emily and Richard, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about 64-ounce games as well as just accessible, board games in general.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us tonight.
My name is Richard Gibbs, and this is my wife, Emily. Emily is, what do you say? What's your job?
So I'm the Director of Youth and Education Services for the National Federation of the Blind of Texas. I'm also a certified teacher of blind students. I went to Louisiana Tech, I don't even know how long ago now, maybe 10 years ago. I got my TBS degree, and so now I'm working for NFBCO Texas.
Nice.
I'm a life skills teacher. I'm not currently working with any blind students, but I know Braille. And my biggest qualification is I'm a big, aside from knowing Braille, I'm a big board game guy. I wanted to design games, and we had a lot of blind friends, and unfortunately we couldn't play many board games with them because there isn't Braille board games. So we ended up creating this company that produces what we call accessibility kits for board games.
So basically what we do is we take a board game off the shelf. One you might be familiar with is something like Apples to Apples or Cards Against Humanity, something that doesn't already have Braille. So we don't do Uno, we don't do Scrabble. We want to make games accessible that aren't currently accessible. And so if somebody else is doing it, that's great. We want as many games as possible to be accessible in Braille. So we do offer kits for Cards Against Humanity and Apples to Apples, but we also offer kits that are a lot more kind of in-depth. So we have we're working right now on a board for Ticket to Ride, which is a train game that you build train routes across the United States, and it has a large board.
Right.
And so we do things like design laser cut 3D boards and then create thermoforms overlays for the boards and clear plastic so they are completely accessible. We don't do just card games.
One timely game that we do sell, for instance, would be Pandemic. So that's a game where you run around the world and try to stop diseases, and it's a cooperative game, so you're trying to work together to figure out the best way to do that. And we offer an overlay for the board and a tactile smaller version of the board that goes with it and some other
Right.
things. So with our accessibility kits, what would happen is you would buy the retail game, you buy the accessibility kit, which is mostly stickers, Braille stickers that you put on both the cards and the board, and then you put them together, and then you can play with your sighted friends.
Right. If you go to our website, I think that a lot of times you might see a lot of games that you're not familiar with. I wasn't a board game person until I met Richard, and it always shocks me how many board games there are. We probably own 400 or more in our personal collection, and those are just games that we like. We constantly are weeding out the games, oh, we'll never play this again, or oh, I didn't really like this one, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of board games out there, and they're not Monopoly, not just Uno, not just Phase 10. And we think it's so important for everyone to have access to those. So if you do hear about games, we love to hear from people, hear what people want. We've had many people request things like, hey, can you make a kit for this? Hey, I'd really love to play this board game, but it has a really complex board. What can you do about it? And
some games we've done, and some games we're like, this is too much. It just depends on how much time we have. Although I will say that for some reason, I'm probably going to have more time to work on something like that if someone requested it now than a month ago.
Right. Jessica, do you have any questions for us?
So we'll open it up, and people can raise your hand by using the *9 or the raise hand in the more section.
Chad asked about, have you done Awful Green Things yet?
Do you know that one, Richard?
I've never heard of that game. It sounds like adults only expansion to Apples, maybe would be my guess, or something like that.
All right, we have
Like we said,
iPhone Mac.
we don't even know them all.
What is your website again?
64OUNCEgames.com.
Can you repeat that again? My mom's writing it down.
64OUNCEGAMES.com. 64ouncegames.com.
Oh, you're breaking up. Hold on one second. 64OU.
Chat box.
Got what?
Here, we're putting it in the chat. 64ouncegames.com.
And it's OUNCE.
Spelled out ounce. OUNCE.
Oh, OUNCE.
I've never heard.
Thank you.
Okay. So Awful Green Things from Outer Space looks like a game with a complex board. We'd have to do some more research on it. If you want to email us, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. We don't have a copy of it right now, so we'd have to get a copy.
Right. And we want to make whenever we do an accessibility kit, we want to make sure that they're games that are still in print and people can still get copies of, because a lot of games have high turnover, and I don't really want to, if I have limited time to make games accessible, I want to make sure that I'm doing one that people will still be able to buy in 5 years.
So Awful Green Things is also a Steve Jackson game. And so a Steve Jackson game you might know is Munchkin. And we do offer Munchkin.
And some of the other Munchkins, like Cthulhu, Munchkin, and those games.
Karis, you can unmute yourself. It's not letting me get you again.
We do not do Life because I think that that's accessible and other people do it.
Yeah.
I think.
All right, Karis?
Have you guys done an accessibility kit for Settlers of Catan?
We have been talking about that for a long time, and that's probably my next project after I finish Ticket to Ride. It's what Settlers of Catan has a very special place in my heart for with Emily, because she's a cancer survivor, and when we first started dating, she would be stuck in her house, and that's what we would do, is we play Settlers. So that's something that I've definitely wanted to do for the blind community for years, but I just want to make sure that when I do it right, and figuring out how exactly to do that without, say, replacing the entire board has been a struggle. What's the benefit of accessible games besides having fun? Well, for one thing, I personally believe that Braille games are Braille literacy. That it, number one, the sense of community, but the idea that if you're just learning Braille and you're having a hard time finding something that you can do repetitively, playing a board game is a good place to just get those skills back in there, because you're seeing the same cards, you're anticipating, and you're getting some of that practice when you're really learning your skills in Braille.
Absolutely. I'm our Bell coordinator, and I always talk about the multitude of skills that you get from playing board games that I think that a lot of blind kids miss out on. Turn taking, sharing, being a good sport, as well as Braille literacy. We offer a lot of kids games in our catalog because it's important to me. And I always highly recommend them to Bell programs because they do teach a lot of those soft skills that you don't necessarily think of, but especially even graphic literacy skills. Reading a tactile graphic. Reading tactile graphics is a skill that has to be learned. And so being able to read a board and not knock the pieces over is a skill that all of our kids need. Maybe everybody needs, adults too. And so playing a board game is a great way to practice that.
Right, in a fun way that isn't just like doing work or a math assignment. You're trying to beat your friends.
So right now we don't offer large print games. We don't offer Braille. We're much more focused on Braille.
There's reasons for that. I've talked to companies about large print versions, and I haven't found a good solution to that, because when you do a large print game, you also have to reproduce or redesign the art. So it becomes a much bigger problem legally to figure out how to do it, because I can just make an accessibility kit and then I'm safe for copyright law because it's putting it in a accessible format. But if I do a large print game, does that apply to the art? Does that apply to the
so it's a little bit more sticky.
Yes, it's a lot more sticky. I cannot talk about Xbox accessibility.
I think that there's probably someone coming on after us that's going to talk about the electronic version of accessibility. We're more board game people. Jessica?
We have Dacia's iPhone.
Yeah, I was wondering, what about Candyland, and what expansion packs have you brailled for Munchkin?
I've done all the major expansions for Munchkin. As far as Candyland, we don't offer that, but we do offer a similar game.
Right. If I'm a parent, and I know Candyland is one of the most popular games for kids, but I don't really understand why, because it's terribly dull. And so just personal preference, I try to play games that are fun, and I can't play Candyland more than once or twice. We offer a game called Monza, which has the same kind of colored pass, but it's a racing game, and it teaches colors. We offer Braille dice with it and a Braille board, and I think it's actually fun. I mean, I guess we could do Candyland, but
well, the other thing is that it's a Hasbro game, and because they're a big manufacturer, my worry with offering too many things from Hasbro is they have different versions, and I worry that people won't get the version that goes with the accessibility kit. So that just has not been a high priority for me.
We have someone named Mr. C. You can unmute yourself. It's not letting me unmute you, Mr. C. And while he's doing that, we have Amber.
Yeah, that's me.
Amber, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So what's the accessibility kits for Cards Against Humanity look like? Those are overlays, or what are they?
I'm gonna be honest. That is one of our. It's hard to do because there are so many words on Cards Against Humanity.
So it's one of our more unique kits. We tried to do everything we could to make the Braille fit, but it was difficult. So it's not, Cards Against Humanity is our most popular kit. It's purchased more often than anyone else, but it also looks kind of crazy.
It's the hardest to assemble because you couldn't do, too many of the cards just would not fit in that area in Braille. So it comes with a set of sleeves that are bigger than the actual Cards Against Humanity cards, and you put the Braille on that sleeve. I suggest that in order to make it easier to shuffle, in addition to putting the card in this clear plastic sleeve with the Braille on it, I suggest that you put a little bit of cardstock on there to make it a little bit more firm. But it is one of the hardest kits that we have to assemble, frankly, just because it's a 500 card game. I mean, it's just, you have to put a Braille sticker on every card. Now, it's going to be a lot faster than trying to Braille it with yourself with a Braille writer, but it's still quite a feat to assemble it, and I haven't figured out a way to assemble it faster. I see in the chat that someone mentioned Sequence. Sequence is probably a game that I should do that I haven't done. I could do it. I should probably do it.
All right, go ahead.
Cribbage probably wouldn't do because it's already pretty tactile with the cribbage boards and stuff, and you can get regular cards. So that wouldn't be something that I would target because I think that there's ways that blind people play cribbage.
All right, Mr. C, go ahead.
Well, this is Sam Clausen. The person before me kind of answered my question for me. So.
Right.
Okay. I see someone typed in Risk. Risk is one of the ones that I don't do yet. And the reason why I've been reluctant to do Risk is, again, it's a mass market game. So I'm afraid that they'll come out with a new version of it quickly. And
so the reason why he keeps saying that is because we run into that a lot with Apples to Apples. They're constantly churning out new versions of Apples to Apples, and people buy them and then buy the kit, and the cards don't match up. So I think we have made 6 or 7 versions of Apples to Apples over the course of the time we've been doing this, just because it keeps changing. Right. And it's not possible. We're just 2 people for us to continually update game kits like that.
Right. So you can imagine with Risk, it's a game of combat where you're fighting each other, and it's the entire world map. Well, the world map sometimes if they did different art, slightly different, if they moved Australia an inch to the left or inch to the right, then our overlays aren't going to work on your version. And that makes it so that you can't play with sighted people. So knowing that is hard. Someone just typed Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering
is the same kind of issue because there's so many different cards, and we don't know exactly what cards you might be playing with in your deck. We would have to do personalized decks for everyone, which would, that could be a whole job.
We don't have time to do that. Now, I do have some suggestions if you want to do Magic the Gathering. You can, with Magic the Gathering, you might want, they have a website that has a list of the cards. What I would do is I would create a QR code and put it on a sticker for something like Magic and have it so that you can use your iPhone to scan it. Or you can just put the title of the card if you wanted to do Magic. But that is something that is so personal that it would be really hard for us to do in any reasonable manner, considering that both Emily and I have full-time jobs.
All right, we have Liz Morgan.
Yes, I was wondering if you have categories or 21 questions.
We don't.
We don't do either of those. We do taboo.
We do taboo. I thought about doing categories, but I don't have a copy of categories. And I would have to figure out how to do the
die.
The die isn't, or the die I could do. It would take some time, but the die I could do.
You said you're on.
Actually, with bingo, actually I haven't put it on the website, but we have made bingo cards. If someone needs bingo cards, we can print them off paper bingo cards and randomized. I have done that before.
Caroline S. has a question. Caroline?
First of all, I was wondering about, do you guys, I know I put this in the chat a couple times, do you guys know about accessible Yahtzee cards? And are there any good apps on the phone that you would suggest? Because I'm doing a lot of stuff on like the iPad and the iPhone.
We are not the people to ask about accessible apps. As for Yahtzee, I haven't done it. I don't know why I haven't done it. It just hasn't been high on my priority. It isn't a game that I love.
After Richard and Emily, we'll be having somebody go over electronic games like iPhone and iPad and things like that. So, all right, and then we have two more. Phone number ending in 3216.
Yes, this is Sergio Mejia. And, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you, Sergio.
Okay, good. Yeah, so, I was just wondering, so are these board games mostly Braille? I'm low vision and I don't know Braille at all. That's one question. And then the other question is, my kids love playing Uno, and I kind of joined the discussion a little later, and I don't know if Uno is also accessible or in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Uno, actually, Uno just released a Braille version of it, and you can hopefully still find Braille Uno at Target stores. We don't necessarily do large print games because there's a lot of other alternative ways that you can access games via large print, whether it's with a magnifier or with other assistive technology, and there's a huge kind of copyright ramifications if we started trying to do large print.
A few, not very many, but there are a few of our games that have a tactile component that that you can play without knowing Braille.
Mm-hmm.
Like Syrup. It's a game where you there are different shaped pieces with like lines on them. So I made a raised version of the lines so you can play it just with tactile feeling the pieces and putting it together.
You don't need to know Braille at all.
Right, but most of our games you do need to know some degree of Braille. However, if you are in the position where you don't know Braille, number one, learn Braille, but it's a good way to practice those Braille skills, because with a board game, you are repeatedly seeing the same things again. It helps with your prediction, helps with your tracking, helps with everything to do with that.
Beecham. So I was just gonna ask, I think a lot of folks have played the Hasbro games. They're common and well known. But like you guys said, you have over 400 games of your own. What do you recommend are some good places to start for maybe people who haven't started exploring outside of the sort of main 5 games, if you will?
Well, I think that if you have, you're starting from absolute scratch, I would recommend something like Apples to Apples. It's a really good starter game. It's a good party game. You play with your friends, and I think a lot of people are familiar with that. After Apples to Apples, one I would go to is probably something like Sushi Go. In Sushi Go, you are collecting sets. You have cards in your hand, and then you take a card and pass it until you collect a set. And again, it's a good party game. You can play with a lot of people, but it's very simple, and it has fun. All the cards are sushi themed, so you are collecting, maki rolls or wasabi.
Other ones that I would suggest, if you're learning them, would be Coup, where it's a bluffing game where you are pretending you're trying to knock out all the other players. It's a 6-player game, and if you can pretend to be other people. It's a big bluffing game, and you can hurt your friends. Another one might be For Sale, which is a realty game where you buy a house and then you try to flip it for money.
And then probably the last one I would recommend is called Love Letter. There's only 10 cards in the entire game, so you're playing with 10 different cards, and you're trying to woo the princess. And the game is very, very quick. You can play, a game in 5 or 10 minutes, and then so you can play a lot of games in sequence.
We don't offer Clue, but we do offer Miles Born, which is the print version of 1,000 Miles.
So we have 2 more questions. We're
Really
going to
quick.
take those 2. And I know you guys have another call that you're going to have to jump onto. So we'll take these other 2 questions.
Really quick, Marianne.
For one thing, question for these guys, but for the lady who is asking about Yahtzee, the best way to do that, frankly, is to braille your own scorecards, because you have to continually write on the scorecards. So making your score sheet is pretty easy to begin with, and then you just continue brailing on the same sheets. For these guys, thanks for a great presentation. How do your stickers hold up on game boards that have to be folded regularly?
Well, the way they're made is we make them in sections, and so the fold isn't folded. And so we actually kind of take that into account. We also, I've noticed they hold up really, really well as long as the kids don't pick them off.
Yeah.
We have 5 kids, and all of our board games are brailled that our kids play with, and all of them hold up until my 4-year-old picked a bunch of off, and then they take them. So once they're picked off, you have to stick them back on, but they don't just fall off on their own.
Yeah, so Kevin Kovacs, when we get some kits, don't pick the stickers.
Right, exactly.
All right, and then phone number 1724.
Yes, this is Ken in New Jersey. Just a comment. This might actually be for the next section of the chat, actually, but a lot of the games, several of the games that I've heard mentioned are also on the RS Games and the Quentin C. Playroom client. If many of you guys have those, you can learn a lot of those 1,000 Miles is on there, and there's a number of Apples to Apples is on RS. There's a number of card games on Quentin C. Playroom that would fit the mode. If you're interested in getting those, there you can play right on your desktop with it. And I've been playing with both of them for several years, and I host a bi-weekly chat every twice a week on Out of Sight with those 2 clients. If you're interested in learning those, look up RS Games and the Quentin C. Playroom. A lot of the great card games that were just discussed here. Sorry, I came in late. I don't know if that was mentioned, but you can learn those games with those clients too. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Do we have any other questions for Emily and Richard? All right, well, thank you guys so much for being on, and I definitely have learned a lot. And so we're going to turn it over to Brett Boyer, and he is going to talk to us about virtual games.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, Brett, I think we may have lost you. Let's see if you're back in here, somewhere else. If you are in here, Brett, unmute or raise hand, please. iPhone. Let's see. Is yours iPhone, Brett, or no? You can. It's not letting me unmute if it is you. There we go.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Sorry, I tried to raise my hand to talk to Richard and Emily because they are like heroes of mine.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So I've been waiting for a company like that to come along since I was a little kid, and I had teenage brothers who would play games and have all kinds of fun stuff that I wasn't a part of because, again, accessibility and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna mute my speech for a moment, so I don't have to listen to the chatter. Not to be rude, but it does get a little distracting.
Of course.
So I'm going to give just a quick little background about me. I'm by no means a game expert. So a lot of the questions I'm already seeing about Uno. I don't know why Mattel took so long to braille Uno. My thing is really playing audio games. That whether it's on the computer or the phone, I'm a big fan of games in general. I'm not always great at the games, but I dabble. I'm a dabbler. So the first, trying to think, I want to make this brief because I know people have more questions than I have to say, than things that I've said, but I just wanted to break down some of the sort of categories of what is out there. So first, of course, we have the most basic of games that you can play at home if you have an iPhone or an Alexa device. Don't undersell Alexa when it comes to games. Because Alexa or Amazon, for those of you who are not that familiar, the Amazon devices, as well as the Alexa app on your phone, she can play lots of audio games with you. Anything from trivia games, which are probably her biggest, you'll see the most skills for that. But there's also audio adventures, and I can give you a few titles just to whet your appetite here. The Escape the Room is very popular. If you guys kind of remember the old sort of text adventures, Escape the Room challenges you to get out of a room, and you have to use everything that you can see or touch or examine to get yourself out of that room. And that's Escape Room. They also have Escape Room 2. Of course, we all know Jeopardy. Jeopardy's really popular, and it does have Alex Trebek sound bites in it, and it has all the Jeopardy sounds and stuff. So if you haven't checked that out on Alexa, a lot of these devices, there are Google Home, which is the other, competitor of Alexa. There are games there as well, but I have to be honest with you, I'm not as much of an expert on Google Home stuff as I am the Alexa. I've been told that a lot of the skills that you can find on Alexa, you can also find on Google Home, and I don't have a lot to back that up. Song Quiz, my favorite game of all time, where you sort of like name that tune and you can play people online. Magic Door is an adventure game for kids and adults. It is kid friendly though. And there are even some great skill quizzes for like Access Technology. There's one called Windows Keystrokes, Access Technology Trivia. There's a few games like that out there. So if you just go into your skills and do a search, and you can even ask Alexa to search for certain skills, their games are called skills. She doesn't do as good of a job as actually looking yourself on the app for what, or online for what skills are out there. And if you have already played the Alexa games and you really want something more challenging, I will tell you the Cursed Painting or Cursed Painting, I'm not sure how they pronounce that, and Starfinder are for more of the advanced gamer types. Let's move into some iPhone stuff. So I don't remember who it was, somebody from New Jersey, my home state. So what's up to Jersey? East Coast represent. there are a lot of great games you can play on the iPhone. Some of them have a nominal cost. Some of them are free. Some of them are free to try, and then if you want to buy more credits, you pay 99 cents for 1,000 credits or something like that. So please make sure you look up those details before you go downloading every single app that we start talking about. And I don't know how I'm running on time here, guys. So
you're perfect. You're great.
So let's talk about a few of those. The first one that a lot of people really like is called Dice World. The nice thing about Dice World is it's a mainstream game. So if you have sighted family members or kids or parents who have phone, they can join you and play Dice World. Dice World has lots of different games, like Yahtzee. Farkle is a popular dice game. Pig is another popular dice game. And I don't remember the 4, 5, 6 million other games that they have on there, but Dice World is pretty popular. Moving into other games, there is a huge game company called Blindfold Games, and I do have all these links in somewhat of I don't know about an organized list, but in a list that I can send over to Jessica or somebody who can redistribute that.
Perfect.
So you guys can download or have the URLs, because some of the URLs are kind of tricky. But Blindfold Games, you can just search for them in the App Store if you want to see what they have. They have, I think, 20, 30 games, something like that. And the neat thing about their games is they have lots of a variety of games. So it's solitaire. They have like 14 or 10 different versions of solitaire. They have more type action games. They have a racing game that's kind of goofy but fun. Bowling, I think, is one of their games. Pong. They've got a game called Color Crush, which is similar to the Candy Crush game that you've heard about a million years ago. That wasn't that long ago. I'm trying to think. So Blindfold Games is really good. Now, if you're into something a little less intensive, there's a great set of games by a company called Choice of Games. And their games are very well-written stories with sort of choose your own adventure. I don't know if you guys remember way back in the day when we had these choose your own adventure books. Your front door's open. Do you want to go, pet the dog, or do you want to go get the mail? And if you wanted to get the mail, you had to turn to page 15. If you wanted to pet the dog, you had to go to page, 17. So they have these, and they're very nicely laid out. They're very easy to use. So if you're not, maybe you don't feel like your tech skills are super great, this is a great way to start. Choice of Games is the name of that company, and they do sell their games in bundles and individuals. So maybe try one of their games. I think they have a bunch of free ones right now because of the isolation thing that's happening. I think they've done some kind of promotion where you get a big bundle of games for about $3.99 or $2.99. And I am not looking at the chat, so I do apologize, guys. It just derails me if I do. I'll try to take questions when I can at the end. Hopefully Kevin can help me out with that.
Nothing in chat yet.
Good. Well, I mean, I guess not good, but good for me. Let's see. So RS Games is the next one that our guy from Jersey mentioned. RS Games has been around for a while. It's created by a group of blind guys, and it was originally on the Windows platform alone. Now they have a client for the Mac, and they also have an interface of the RS Games through, I believe it's through Blindfold Games. Now, I will tell you from just as an honest opinion, the iPhone app is not as good as using a PC. If you have a Bluetooth keyboard with your iPhone, RS Games is actually quite a bit nicer. But there are lots of gestures and things you have to kind of get used to, and there's loud music and you have to turn it down. It's just a couple of little buggy things that make it not as user-friendly. But it is great once you figure it out and you learn the ropes on how to move around and do things. There are, I think, 20-something games in there, dice and cards, mostly. I know somebody mentioned Yahtzee, 1,000 Miles, Uno is in there. My favorite, Monopoly, is in there, Farkle. There's a new game called Werewolf, which is a card based on a card game where you have to play different roles as villagers and werewolf and the police and stuff. And it's kind of a new way of playing cards if you haven't tried that. Just a bunch of games. They even have slot machines. They've shut the box. I think they have blackjack, but I'm not sure. The other on the other side of that, we have Quentin C's Playroom. Now, Quentin C is actually was developed in France. The guy was French who made this really cool game room. Similar to RS, they have 20, 25 games with lots of different. I did mention RS Games also has Apples to Apples and Cards Against Humanity. If you're feeling a little risque, Cards Against Humanity is quite fun. The Quentin C has lots of dice and card games. If you are looking for that, again, the Quentin C is only available on the PC. I think they do have a web interface, and I've heard some people say it's not bad. I've never used it. I use the downloadable PC version because it has all the sounds and the keystrokes built in, and I can move around quickly. I'm not going to go into the pros and cons of RS Games and Quentin C because it'd be a waste of time. Looking through another great arcade, if you're looking for more arcade type games, for the iPhone is Audio Game Hub. And that's sort of a nice intro. If you've never really played arcade games as a blind person, or you relying on audio only, Audio Game Hub is a great way to start. The games are simple, yet they are challenging. If you want to get into something a little more advanced, there's another arcade game called Audio Wizards, and a new one that just came out called Blind Quest. And those are both available, as far as I know, on all platforms, especially Windows and iDevices. I have a lot of other games. There's flight sim games. There's a world exploring / flight sim game called Eurofly. If you're interested in sort of looking at the world, it was originally started as an Audible Atlas, and then the guy decided to make it into a flight sim so you could learn how to fly a plane to different countries and things like that. I'm gonna stop now and let you guys, if you guys have any questions, I'll try to answer them the best I can. Keep in mind, I am by no means a game developer. I don't have, I'm not on the inside track when it comes to this stuff. I do try to stay aware of what's going on. Actually, before I take questions, there are some PlayStation and Xbox games. They have EA games, Electronic Arts. If you guys are probably familiar, EA Sports, those guys. They have put together an accessibility division. And in the last 2 years, they have really been trying to work out and do some major accessibility modifications to some of their games. So I know Madden, and I think FIFA 2020 and Madden 2020 and 2019 have a lot more accessibility improvements. And you can just do a Google search for the name of the game and put in blind accessibility and just see what kind of stuff you'll come up with, because there are guys playing playing these games on YouTube. So you don't have to maybe buy a whole game. If you really, maybe you just want to see what accessibility features it has, do your homework, do a little research if you really are interested in those kinds of things, because again, it's a nice outlet. It gives you something different to do. You can practice your audio, because a lot of this, especially the arcade games, use left and right stereo. So you have to play with headphones, and you have to be listening for when sounds are coming in on your left and coming in on your right. So it's a great way to improve those listening skills or mental mapping skills. You have to remember where the sword was. So you have to go back west 3 times and north twice to go into the bedroom and get the sword. I don't know why you'd have a sword in the bedroom, but you get the point. All right, I am finally done, so I will take some questions.
In the chat, Shanna says, since hanging with friends stopped being developed, do you know any other accessible means of playing word games such as Hangman, Scrabble with other people?
At this moment, I do not. I'm kind of limited in the things that I enjoy. It is not with friends, but there's a great word game that I like called I Associate, and they've made a couple of them now. Those are accessible. They're really nice with a braille display if you have a braille display. But I Associate is a great one. It's one word, I Associate, and it is a neat word game. But I'm not aware, and like I said, maybe somebody else will have some ideas of other playable games online with each other for words. That was an unfortunate one, because I knew a lot of friends who used to play that.
Liz says, I associate Blind Quest and Alterion.com.
Alterion.
Alterion.com.
Mm-hmm. So Alter Eon is what we used to call, well, I guess we still call it a MUD. And that's not an attractive name for a game, but it stands for Multi-User Dungeon. Dungeon is misleading. But what it is they create these worlds for you to explore and do quests. You know, there are all different types of MUDs. You do need a MUD client, which is a program that connects to these things. These things have been around, some of them for 25, 30 years. We're talking old school tech. These are like the text adventures. You know, you're standing in a forest. You can hear the sounds of animals all around you. There's one big tree in front of you. You can go north, south, or east. You know, do you go east? Do you try to climb the tree? If you guys remember, some of you folks who are as old as I am will probably remember text adventures. And that's what these are, but they're set in online worlds with other people. Some of them are set in medieval times. Some of them are set in outer space. Some of them are based off of authors. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing a Harry Potter MUD out there. I just started playing MUDs again. It's been about 20 years for me. And the name of this MUD is called Triad City. And it's really for people who enjoy literature and pop culture. It's kind of a neat, cerebral sort of place. You know, there are lots of MUDs out there played by both blind and sighted people.
Dacia was asking about RPGs.
RPGs are very much like what I was talking about, the MUDs. There are single player RPG games like Kings of Dragon Pass, which is an iPhone app. And I'm sure there's other ones I'm forgetting. I don't play a lot of RPGs. I do know that one version of the RPG are these MUDs, because like somebody suggested, Alter Eon. Alter Eon's a great MUD. But you do play a role. You could be a sorcerer, you could be a healer, a necromancer, and you can go and, you know, learn magic and gain experience and level up. That's one of the neat things about these MUDs. Now, some people, especially younger people, I have to say, don't like them because they are text-based. They want more fast action kind of stuff. But if you take the time, you learn so much more with these text games about logic and puzzles and reading and, you know, grammar and all that stuff too.
Kelly says Ballyland has free apps for kids.
I have not heard of that, and I'm going to write that down right now. Ballyland.
Ballyland.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will include that in my searching.
Liz, 7 Little Words is a word game there.
That's a great one. Yes. Thank you for thinking of that. I had forgotten about 7 Little Words.
Let's see. Barbara, can you play any other I Associates besides I Associate 2?
As far as I know, you can. I played the original. I've played 2. I haven't kept up on all the I Associates, so I do know that they have, you know, lots of different packs inside those I Associates for like 99 cents. You can buy more levels and things like that. But I'm not aware of if there are new versions. I'm not aware of their accessibility. Don't forget, you can always go to applevis.com, and under their app listings, they have a games category where blind guys have reviewed. I keep saying guys, I mean people. I shouldn't say that. Blind folks have reviewed accessibility of all these apps, and they'll let you know right out of the box if an app is accessible or not, if it's in their listing. So applevis.com is a great place to do some more research. Another great website for research, sorry, Kev,
you got
audiogames.net. That is the most concise resource that I have found online that has a current database of audio games going back to, I think I joined Audio Games back in 2001. So I'm a big supporter of them. They have forums where people talk about games and get help and learn about new games, but they also have a news section. My favorite part of audiogames.net is the drop-down box right on the front page. There's a combo box that has every game listed in their database in alphabetical order. And sometimes I just go in there and look for something that just sounds interesting. A couple of side notes before we take the next question. There are also sims out there. There's a great, if you don't know what a sim is, you know, there are creating things like Park Boss. You can build your own amusement park, and you have to make decisions on what to put in the park, how much to charge, where to strategically place things. There's a tube sim. If you want to drive the tube in the UK, you can learn how to basically drive the tube, and you have to make your passengers happy. So you have to drive well, and you have to keep the lights on at night and do all these different things. If you're more inclined to play something that's not so quick. These games are really nice because you work at them and you build up your business or your, whatever it is.
One Matt mentions Blind Light, Light.
Not familiar with that one. I'll write it down right now.
And another one says Clever Clues.
Clever Clues is not bad. I played that as well. It's very similar to I Associate from what I remember. And I think you can play that with other people.
And yeah, if you can send that list to us, we will distribute this.
Yeah, I want to put it in somewhat of an organized fashion. So give me I'll try to send it tonight.
We'll distribute it, but we'll try to figure it out.
Oh, okay.
It might be good if we collect information for people who want it.
Okay. All right, and then let's see, we got some questions over here. We've got Zachariah.
All right.
Zachariah, you there?
Wow.
We'll try him again in a minute. Oh, it's not now. All right.
That is cool.
Quincy.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. I had a question, and you may not know the answer, but I'm looking for games that I can play online, like that have graphics, so that because like RS games you can play with other blind players, but I have a lot of my like sighted friends that want to play online games with me, and obviously Dice World you already mentioned. And so I guess I was just wondering about any games that you might know of that have good graphics that can be played by both blind and sighted.
I can like I said, that Apple Vis, that their game section, they probably have a pretty good listing of some of those. You might want to check that out because they really have a good list of stuff. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I know there are some of the, and the name's escaping me now. I thought some of the blindfold games had graphics as well, but no, they don't.
Usually green, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I know there was one that said played by the blind and sighted alike, and I can't for the life remember the name of what it was.
It was Game World. That's what it was.
What was it?
It was Game World. It used to be Hoop Whittle or whatever that weird name used to be. Now it's renamed Game World.
Game World. Okay, yeah. Maybe I'm okay, good. Well, thanks for that. I just remember the tagline, but I couldn't remember the title.
Sorry, random other thing. The game that you mentioned earlier, Park Box, is that for like iOS or computer?
Park Boss is a Windows based, unfortunately.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
it's pretty cool though.
Okay, cool.
And then some of these games I've done this. I've had people around me and they like to play, so we'll just sit around together at home. I mean, I know that's not as popular now, but if you have people in your house, one of the things that we would do is we just kind of crank up the audio and everybody would play, and then I might drive the keyboard or something. You made me think of one other thing that I wanted to mention. There's a game called, and this is a tough one, so we'll definitely have to get a list for this one. Bulwark, Bulwark, in the City of Flesh. And I don't think it's as gruesome as it sounds, but I could be wrong. But it is an audio game, a video game, and you can even play it as just a radio drama. That is available in the App Store as well as PC. So it's one of those audio games where they blacken the screen for people who want to try to play, for sighted folks who want to try to play the audio version. But they also have a video game version. Those are not player versus player, though. That would be more of just a one person only game. But it is pretty cool that they have 3 different ways you can play it. I just stumbled across that one a couple days ago. So
Matt, iPhone Matt.
Yeah, the blind knight is a knight who's blind, and you have to fight. Like you have to fight other knights.
Yes.
Not Blind Light. Okay.
The Blind Knight.
Yeah.
Knight. Sorry.
Knight, Knight. Yeah. Okay. That's a pretty cool one. If again, it's sort of an audio arcade type game. Your daughter is sighted and you're the old blind swordsman, and you use, you know, swipes and things to, you know, fight your enemies. That's a great one. Thank you.
Amber.
Yes. So I have a game that I've been able to play with a combination of voiceover and low vision, you know, voiceover and my own low vision for the past few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having some problems with it. It's called Evil Apples. There is a part where you have to put in your email address and then hit continue, which I can do with voiceover just fine. But I got a friend who's totally blind who I figured, okay, no problem. I will just generate the link for him and then he can sign in. Well, that's not what happened. He tried to sign in and it just took him right back to the main lobby of the game where it was asking for his email address and it wasn't compatible with voiceover.
Oh.
I was wondering how I can help him because I really want him to participate in these game nights I host once a week, but he can't right now because this isn't working for him.
So it may be something where the button that you're supposed to press to continue for either voiceover's not finding it.
Yeah, voiceover is not registering the field where he's supposed to type, which for me, like I said, no big deal. I can turn voiceover off, tap my finger on it, turn it back on. Now it recognizes it's in a field. I do my business. He can't do that.
Now, well, a lot of times if I have something like that, one of the first things I'll try is I'll put my finger on the screen to find, maybe I can't get into it, but it will say email address edit, and I can't get into it, but I'll put my finger there several times to make sure I know exactly where the spot is. I'll turn off voiceover by triple clicking the power button or the home button.
Yes.
And then put my finger there and then triple click voiceover back on. It's a really crappy workaround, but sometimes it actually works.
That's what I do.
It's not the best solution. Another solution would be honestly to contact the makers, the app developers. That you'd be surprised how many app developers, once they realize that people want to play their games and blind people want to play their games, they you know, will look into it, and you'd be surprised at how much they respond to stuff like that. I know there was a great game. I don't know if it's still available, so I didn't include it in my list, but it was called Moxie. I don't know if it's still around, but the guy, once he found out blind people were using it, he made it way more accessible and made sure the right areas spoke. Now, Moxie was a cool game because they would give you letters and you'd have to put them into a grid and spell words using just those letters. It was kind of a neat sort of turn on Scrabble. Well, it wasn't really Scrabble, and then you had to replace letters. You had to make new words with new letters. You couldn't move the letters around. So it was kind of it was a really good challenging game for my family and I. When we were on a plane trip together, we would pass the phone around and I could turn on voiceover and put my part in and give it back to the next, you know. So again, it wasn't like player versus player. It was all of us playing for the common good, as it were.
And the chat says, RS Games has a client for both low vision and blind.
Yeah, I think it's the same client, but yes.
Okay. Somebody mentions A Hero's Call and Blind Legend.
A Hero's Call is really good. That was a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter game that's taken off. It's got a really good music and live professional voice acting. It is very much an RPG, as somebody had asked about an RPG earlier. A Hero's Call is a few bucks, I think, for the main game, but it really, in the scheme of you know, games and things, it's really not that expensive. I've never been one of these people that believes that every game should be free for the blind. So when a game charges a few bucks, you know, $5 here, you know, $3.99, I've always been one to give them the money because I know how hard these guys have worked to put this thing together. And what did you say? Blind Legend?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about a Blind Legend. I know the name sounds familiar. I think it's an RPG as well. I don't remember if it's an iOS game I believe it's an iOS game.
Janet or Jeanette says, are many of these games, PC games, JAWS friendly?
Yes. Most of these games are self-voicing. A few of them will tell you that, you know, you can run your screen reader and they have different options where you can pick whether you want the game to self-voice. So RS Games is an example. If there's a key I think in RS games that where you can tell it what screen reader you're using, and it will, you know, it will adapt to that screen reader. I just had another thought that went in and out so fast. Darn it. Oh, for the real advanced gamers out there that really want a challenge and really want something to push them, if you haven't played Crazy Party, that is my #1 favorite game of all time. I've been addicted to it for a couple years. It's an arcade. It's mini arcade games. If you've ever heard of people playing, or if you've ever played the Mario Party games for the whatever console came out, they're these little fun arcade games where you have to do all these different things. Some of them are silly. Some of them are really challenging. And then there's a whole other side of Crazy Party that's a card battle, very much like Pokemon cards, where you have to be elements and fight different elements, and you have cards that for strength and cards that will do damage and offensive and defensive spells and physical, you know, cards. That is a really fun game. I would not suggest a newbie or a beginner of audio games get into that right away. That's more for your intermediate to advanced people, especially, again, Windows PC only. So you're kind of limited by that as well. But Crazy Party is great.
Question here. Do we know, are there any laws or regulations that require games to be accessible at all?
No.
Okay. And then this one says they tried Shades of Doom by GMA and it's really good, they said.
Oh, that's so awesome. So Shades of Doom is like, for like people who've played audio games for a long time know this was one of the first real first-person shooter games that came out. And you had to go and investigate this government lab that was shut down, and turns out everybody became zombies. And so you have to run through this like abandoned lab of different floors, and you have to kill monsters, and you have to get keys to the next level. Very kind of like, the reason they called it Shades of Doom is because, I don't know if you guys remember, way back when in the mid-90s, there was a really popular game called Doom that everybody was playing. And this is sort of I wouldn't say it's an exact replica because it wasn't as challenging as Doom, but it was of that ilk to get blind people to play these audio games because, you know, it wasn't that popular back then. Audio games, and even now, I don't think they're as popular as in the gaming world is to sighted people as audio games to the blind community, which is unfortunate.
Phone number 4832.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Dorothy.
Hey, Dorothy.
Hey, so I'm a dinosaur, so I'm back in the Atari and Nintendo days. But I did used to play Life on the Lifesavers with the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But so on your phone, when you're playing app games, you know, the old things had controllers. So what's the controller? So say if they had a game where I'm shooting like for Centipede type.
Right.
What would I use to move the shooter?
It would be swipes probably.
Oh.
So you would like, so, or some games are actually even use your phone's sensor. So you can like shake the phone to do something and then shoot, or swipe until you hear the enemy in front of you. You know, you hear a guy coming on the left. So maybe you have to tap the left side of the screen and then he's coming down from the right. I think there's a game called Ear Monsters, which is very similar. It's kind of like a Space Invaders, where you have to tap on the side of the screen that the monster is coming at you.
Okay, so do they have instructions on the before you start the game?
Oh yeah, almost all of the, especially the iOS games for the iPhone, will give you full instructions. I would recommend you check out Audio Game Hub for a nice start to try something.
Okay.
That's great. Keep playing them. It doesn't matter how old you are.
I'm going to try.
Please do.
Thanks,
Dorothy. Okay.
I encourage everybody to try it.
All right, Marianne. Marianne?
Uh-oh.
Hey, couple of things for you. One, somebody way back in the chat wanted to know what you think of Zombies Run.
Oh, I haven't talked about that one. Why don't you talk about it?
No, and I know you and I both absolutely love it, so I just thought that was really funny.
That's awesome.
It is a fabulous game, and it's one of the ways I'm losing lots of weight. So yes. I love it. For two, have you seen anything now that was like Grizzly Gulch? I used to love that game.
Grizzly, it was such a goofy game. It was so great though. Grizzly Gulch, for those of you that don't know or who weren't born yet, for us old fogies, Grizzly Gulch was kind of our first real audio game that was, it came on CD-ROM. Like, that was the first thing. I didn't have to download. I just bought the game and it worked. It was a really cheesy Western type game where you had to, shoot the bank robbers and shoot. That was basically it, right? You had to figure out.
And you played games in the casino, and
That's right.
And you helped the hotel, and there was a whole bunch of different levels to it based on what you had done. You leveled up and so on.
And even though it wasn't like a complex game, it really captured your imagination, and they did a good job of giving you things to do. I'm racking my brain trying to think of anything I've seen that's similar to that, and I honestly can't. There are some of the story type games where you do a few things and then the story sort of unfolds, but not to the extent of Grizzly Gulch.
Nothing
quite
like that.
Their follow-up, Chillingham Manor, was not as good.
No. And the other thing I was going to say is, have you had a chance to play with any of the Lisi games?
No.
I just bought Lisi for JAWS, which is a whole extra set of JAWS scripts and so on. And they have something like 40 some Lisi games.
Now
they do have a connection into RS games through their game portal.
They bought the rights to several. They bought up some old abandoned sort of games, which is kind of neat that they did that. And they put them into Lisi. I know Q9 is one of those games. Q9 is a side scroller, which means, you only use your left and right arrow to travel, and then you have to fend off animal attacks. You're like a little alien guy. It's kind of a cute, fun sort of game. I don't know much
that'll
about
have to be my next one. I just spent 3 hours lost in Park Boss, though.
Isn't Park Boss fun?
Rachel
It's a
said
blast.
you heard you can download Grizzly Gulch. Hasn't tried it yet, though, online.
You can. I have had some problems with it working with the newer versions of Windows, so take that into account. But there is an original setup and a patch. If you can find both of those, you may be able to let it work on your Windows computer.
And the presenter before, Richard, did they say anything about Monopoly, the board game?
No.
Online version?
Monopoly would fall into one of those games that they said is already being produced by several different companies. I think the Braille Superstore.
Oh, that's right.
Braille.com has that. You can probably go to any of your Maxi Aids or, one of your blindness companies to find that. $65, $75. They really try to go for the stuff that's not so mainstream, or that's not your typical sort of game that's been around for years. I mean, I remember being 3, and the only games available, 5. The only games available to me were Scrabble, Monopoly, I think, a few English games that UK games that I'd never heard of, and that was it. So for these guys to come out with all these great games, it's just, I can't say enough about them. Before we go on to one more thing, I wanted to mention Zombies Run. Zombies Run is really cool. It's not really, it is a game, but it's more of an audio drama, and it uses exercise as your base. So, and Marianne did a great job of explaining this last time. I'm not going to do as well as she did, but you are in a surviving town of an apocalypse, which is kind of, I guess, appropriate. Oh boy, sorry, my dog's barking. And you're one of the people that has to help the town survive. So you have to go do things like get supplies, and they send you out on these missions. And what the missions are workouts. So if you're on an exercise bike or a treadmill, or I guess if you had a big field, you could run up and down around. The idea is you using your physical movement as doing the missions that they send you on. The other cool thing about it is you also get to listen to your music interspliced with the radio drama. So the folks on the radio will talk to you and tell you things that are happening and make sure you're okay. And then every once in a while, as you're doing your kind of typical rowing or treadmilling or whatever, the zombies will come. And when the zombies come, you have to increase your speed in whatever you're doing. And your phone has the sensor, of course, to tell how much movement is going on. And if you don't make it, the zombies get you. Now, to be honest, really all that just happens is they get loud in your ear, they growl once, and then you're back to your mission. But it is scary, and it does get your heart going. You hear these coming at you from both sides in your headphones. I was using an elliptical or a treadmill, I think it was, and it definitely got my heart racing. because they were getting loud and my music was going down and the zombies were getting louder. So that's sort of a nice, fun way to end this, actually, because it's an audio game. It's also uses exercise as part of the part of the gameplay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brett.
All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll try to put a little list together. Maybe if you guys, if there's enough demand for another one, maybe we can do a follow-up sometime if you guys are really. But I really encourage you to go check out some of these titles and some of these. Applevis.com, audiogames.net, great resources for both all platforms.
So probably the easiest way for us to distribute this list will be on Colorado Talk.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't think that it's something that David Andrews is kind of, of course, so that everyone doesn't get blasted with emails. He's pretty particular about what we can send out to the national listserv. So if you'd like to have a copy of this list, even if you just temporarily sign up for Colorado Talk, and you do that by going to www.nfbnet.org and click on subscribe to mailing list, and then just go to Colorado Talk. Basically, all you have to put in is your email address. And then after we send the list out, if you're not from Colorado or if you don't have interest in seeing what we're doing in the Colorado affiliate, you can always unsubscribe. But I think that will be the easiest way for us to distribute without trying to collect everybody's contact info on here.
I guess, you guys could email me if that would make it easier. I could just put my co-center address, and you guys could email me if you want a copy.
Do you mind throwing that in the chat, Brett?
Yeah. Give me
Also, somebody wanted you to type the websites, those websites for the games and stuff.
The problem is I'm on my phone and I have all my notes on the computer.
I will.
Let me put my email address. It's going to take me a minute, so you go ahead and stall if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a great conversation. I've definitely learned a lot about accessible games that I didn't know before. And so I just appreciate so much having Emily and Richard on, and appreciate having Brett on. It's always great, especially in this time of physical distancing, to find ways that we can entertain ourselves, and ways that we can find spaces to interact with our friends. And then when we all get together, of course, we're going to all want to play accessible board games together. So this is exciting. And I don't know if anybody else has any comments or questions.
What's the Colorado Talk website again?
So you go to subscribe to Colorado Talk. You go to www.nfbnet.org.
Okay.
And you would then click on subscribe to listservs, and then Colorado Talk.
And let's see, somebody has having trouble getting in Colorado Talk. So if you typed in the chat, go ahead, Brett.
So my email, for those that didn't get it from the chat, is bboyer, BBOYER @CO Center, Colorado Center, cocenter.org.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give this email out with a
Colorado Talk. You can send Brett an email.
And I'm going to give this disclaimer out, guys. I am not tech support, and I am not a game guru. So if you're going to email, please do not email me with questions about how to play games, because I probably won't know. And if something's not working, I am not responsible for those games.
This is just to get that list from him.
Yep. The email address is just for to get this links list, and there's a couple descriptions of what I was talking about as well. But I know when I do this, I'm going to get, I downloaded this and it doesn't work. Why? I will not answer those questions. I'll be honest with you right now. I love you, and I appreciate that that you're reaching out, but you need to talk to the developers, the website, whoever, just not me.
All right. Mary, I sent you an email that you can help, to help get on Colorado Talks. Anybody else? I think that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thanks so much, guys.
He must not have seen your hand, sweetie.
No.
Oh,
Apparently not.
Paul had his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Paul.
Oh,
What's
that's
going
too
on, Paul?
bad.
Oh, wait.
What did you want?
He's still mute.
Hold on, we're unmuting him.
I can't unmute Paul.
Paul's got my
Paul,
personal
unmute
email.
yourself.
I'm gonna have to hit clapping. Hold on.
I are more than
Hi,
friends.
kids.
Oh, there you go, Paul.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Paulie?
Hi there. Just a quick tidbit of ponderous real recollection, and that
Come
is
on.
you know, there were several extremes.
Should we hang up?
The fact from the days of
Yeah.
Hang on, Paul. I'm going to mute again and then get you, okay? All right. Paul, go ahead and unmute. There we go.
There you go.
All right,
There you
hold
go.
on.
There you go, Paul.
You're on, Paul.
Go ahead, Paul.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Am I there?
Yeah.
Hi there. I was just
You're all there.
pondering some reflections from various extremes, and that be the case, which was from the days of everything from Apple IIe to MS-DOS and your PC. My plunge and use was I and a few others, of course, were really into playing games that didn't talk. Either they, of course, you played the game, they didn't come up talking with a screen reader or DOS or whatever. And I used, and still in my toolkit to this day, because there's nothing like it, after 41 years, my Opticon, and you had very one-dimensional vibrating images.
You're killing me.
I know. and therefore, now when there was lots of time on one's hands, as is now, one of the fun things to actually do, and I swear to God, I kid you not, was to play Tetris with the Opticon, and it was doable.
Wow.
If you really wanted to
You
do so.
are amazing.
And you could play Tetris. I used to use it also. Of course, it was very handy for troubleshooting, in any computer application when things suddenly stopped talking. If I needed, to know why on the screen something stopped, and you had your CRT lens, which made it very flexible with the Opticon, and it used to also make it possible for because being deafblind at the time, and there were times when hearing aids wouldn't be on, and I would actually use for chat. And I'd be up on the screen with the Opticon with IRC, with Internet Relay Chat. So between that and games that didn't talk or whatever, and to look at little graphics spinning and revolving moons and suns and graphics, it was wonderful.
I'd like to point out the versatility and just the idea that I don't think kids nowadays would go the extra mile and a half to make that happen, Paul.
No, they
Those
wouldn't.
are the kind of stories that I enjoy, because that's blind people taking matters into their own hands and taking care of business. And you don't see as much of that nowadays. We expect sort of everything handed to us and self-voicing.
Yep. I've had mine for 41 years and it's still there in my toolkit.
I've got a few students that would love to see that.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
such
everybody.
as my 2 cents.
Thank you, Paul.
I have a quick question.
What's that?
Is the Zombies Run, that's iOS?
Correct.
Yes.
On
Okay,
iPad.
great, thanks.
Yes.
All right. Good night, folks.
Thank you, guys.